What's going on? Welcome back to the Diabetech podcast. I'm Justin, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, management, and beyond with diabetes educators, tech leaders, and those thriving with diabetes. And today I got my friend Jenna back on the show to talk with me all about how we do and don't let diabetes interfere with our lives and kind of navigating life and so many different facets of it with our diabetes. Her and I have two very different experiences with it because Jenna was diagnosed with diabetes way earlier in life, around 2 years old, and I was just diagnosed about 2 years ago. So I have a large amount of time before having diabetes that I got to live without the disease. So we cover a bunch of different topics, from friends and how we interact with them when we bring up diabetes, how we have to bring up diabetes when you really have to, relationships, how to navigate those, dating, intimacy, how we interact with our technology in those moments. We also get into food. When you have diabetes, you have a very interesting relationship with food. And we also get into traveling, which has a whole bunch of complications to it because you need all your supplies with you. So we've got a great episode for you. I'm very excited for you to listen to it. But before we do, I've got new episodes of this podcast that release every Monday on here and all podcast platforms. Just search Diabetech. And I've got videos coming on Fridays on YouTube as well. Right now it's every other Friday. I may go back to every Friday soon. Stay tuned on that. I want to do that, but I really wanted to make sure that the content I put out on Fridays was quality and wasn't me just scrambling, being like, oh my God, I need to put something out. So we're going to every other Friday for now on YouTube, and I will update you if we go back to every Friday. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or any of my content on social media and YouTube is not medical advice. Always consult with your physician before making changes to your healthcare. Today's episode is sponsored by Omnipod, but in no way does that affect the questions I ask or the opinions that I have. Okay, Jenna, we're live. Welcome back.
Woo! Happy to be back, guys. Here we go again.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Everyone loves when you come on the show. And I think this is going to be a very special episode for kind of both us, but also the listeners. You and I both have very different experiences when it comes to diabetes and how it kind of intervenes in our lives. Because, I mean, you've had it for almost your entire life, and I've only had it for, right? And I've only had it for like 2.5 years now. So I really do have like a before times. And I'm just so curious to hear like your reactions and stories for a lot of what I have planned for this conversation, and kind of see how they like compare to mine.
Because I don't have that before times, I truly feel lucky in some ways. I'm like, this is just life. This is what it is. This is little old me walking through the world. But then I have noticed in some of our conversations about diabetes, you'll be like, I'm like, oh, I don't feel that way at all. And then you're like, oh, you don't get fill in the blank, or blah, 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 you don't feel anxious about this. I'm like, oh, no, I do. It's just a different recognition of it for me. So I feel like we may have some moments of that today, too. A little discovery, too. Yeah,
because I almost may be hyper aware of these things that come up diabetes related, because last time, well, you know, when I ate pizza 3 years ago, I didn't have to think about that. I didn't have to worry about that. Whereas for you, you just grew up with this lifestyle and with these reactions you had to have, or experiences that really just probably don't even faze you anymore, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into all of this, can you just kind of remind everyone, and for people who are new, kind of a little bit about kind of your journey?
I was diagnosed when I was 3 years old. And so I literally don't have memories of life before diabetes. I have been on an insulin pump since I was 7. I was doing MDI prior to that, but I was 7 years old and I got on the pump. I was on Medtronic for my whole life up until this summer. I switched to Omnipod. I'm on the Omnipod 5 system now, so I've got that whole automated closed loop, baby. What a way to be. So that's Justin and I have talked about that before on here. It's been a really cool experience, and yeah, just even, after all these years of diabetes, so many new things to learn as technology just continues to develop, to iterate, and hopefully make life easier for all of us.
Yeah, that Omnipod 5 switcheroo episode that we did was super interesting. And then we also went to the factory and did a whole episode on that. So if anyone's interested, go check that out. I want to start with kind of highs and lows. And that's probably going to, come into play a lot throughout this conversation. But like, have you ever had a low that has, on a personal level, like brought you down? Like anxiety and paranoia is part of that whole experience. Like, have you had a low that just like got in the way that day when you were doing that thing and just kind of really threw you off and kind of got you really down?
Yeah. I mean, this is right off the bat, a perfect example of it. I'm like, I would never say like, oh, it brought me down, but I'm like, yeah, I have days where like, I feel like I'm just like in a loop where like for some reason, who knows what is going on, metabolism wise or insulin sensitivity or what the heck, for whatever reason in the world, I just like can't catch myself. I just keep going low, one after the other after the other. So that's the first thing I thought of with that question, are these days when it just feels like, why can't I get a grip on this? And it's hard to not blame yourself and internalize that in those moments. But again, here I am on a pretty in range day saying this, but it's, those aren't the norm too. Those are flukes that I think we all with diabetes experience every once in a while. And then of course I have, oh God, a handful of the stories of like the bad lows that are like embarrassing in some ways and are, really scary and, covered just head to toe in sweat through my pajamas, that kind of thing. And again, it's just, those aren't normal. It's an unfortunate part of life, but you just have to, like anything, learn to move through it.
How do you handle a low around friends? Let's even say like newish friends that you're not like not me, right? Like a friend
Right.
that, and also I have diabetes, so it's a little different, but like you get to a party, and I've had this experience. You get to a party and you like all of a sudden, you must have been rushing there. You're like, you're 55. You just get to the party and you're like, oh my God, like I am so low. You can't even talk to people. Like, can you think of a time when that's kind of happened and like kind of how you went about navigating that?
I think I have this insane, just like, all right, play cool. But like, obviously the priority is like, let me get my low stuff. Let me get my juice. If I don't have something in my bag right away, like, oh, could you have a cute little soda? Do you have something I can have? Like, you kind of do that. And then just like I would try to look for like the person I'm closest to and just kind of like, hey, like I'm just having some really low blood sugar right now. I'll be cool in just a second, but like I just need a minute. Or if you're at a totally new event with people that you don't know, I may, depending on how severe the low is, if I'm super low, I don't want to go isolate myself, but just taking a moment in the bathroom. I get really clammy when I'm low. I am just covered in cold sweat. So I'll go to the bathroom and I'm like, kind of I'm like just dusting myself off a little bit, just trying to make sure I'm feeling okay. But I don't know. I guess, again, just trying to have faith and remember where I'm like, it's gonna bounce back. You're gonna be okay. Just like take a couple deep breaths, give it a moment. We'll be fine. I don't know. Maybe that's an overly simple answer. What do you feel? What did you do at that party?
Well, it's funny because like a lot of people probably aren't as forthcoming as I am. Like I'm kind of an open book. I mean, also like my job is diabetes, right? So like I don't mind talking to people about my diabetes. So like I can remember a couple times that stick out to me. One was like it was a holiday party. I was rushing there and I get there and as soon as I walk in, it's like so crowded and there's like so many people I don't know. And like in order for me to get in and like walk to like whatever snacks may be available because I didn't have any low snacks, like this was like at a time when I made those mistakes. I get in and then I see Sour Patch Kids on the table. I'm like, yes. So I like grab a few and I'm eating them. And then like this new guy like comes up to me. He's like, hey, like, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like trying so hard to listen to them and like being engaged, but it's impossible, right? Like sometimes it's just so impossible to listen and really comprehend what they're saying, because you're like, your body is like falling, it's shutting down essentially. So I remember in this moment, I said to him, I was like, hey, I have type 1 diabetes and I just have a low blood sugar. So as much as I do want to continue talking to you, I can't fully like have a conversation right now. And I mean, he totally took it well, but like I had to say that. And it was less for him. It was for me to feel comfortable in that moment, because it's a very uncomfortable experience being like that. Right. And like the fact that you feel like you need to like, well, it's not that you need to explain it. It's like, in order for me to feel comfortable in that situation, I need to explain it.
And that's just like, also, I think, like, that's too just like a difference in the, you know, sometimes I want to be able to, sometimes I will feel comfortable like telling a friend about it. And sometimes, again, I just feel this like, okay, like, let's just move through this. You know your body, you know how you're doing. And then, but again, that also has its risks too. Because if you aren't coming up quickly, or if you do start trying to have a conversation, you're like not making sense, you know, but just different comfort levels, different perspectives. And in no way am I like trying to hide it from anybody, but I feel like I have spent so much of my life being like, oh, diabetes is just a factor. It's not the thing. So I'm apprehensive to walk into a space and be like, hello, diabetic over here, you know?
Then there's me. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that, but I'm definitely like, I mean, well, because oftentimes like the third question people ask you is like, what do you do? And then I'm like, well, I'm a type 1 diabetes content creator and podcaster. I was diagnosed on TikTok. And then they're like, tell me more. So I'm like, you know, I should just give them a card that, you know, with a QR code, they can watch a video. I was just
going to say, QR code, here's my YouTube, subscribe.
My diagnosis story. Oh my God, that's a great idea. We're going to do that. I'm going to work on that.
No one take it. No one take it.
So kind of in the same vein of what we were saying, how often would you say you'd even talk to your friends about your diabetes? Because again, it's my job. I obviously talk to my friends about diabetes. It's not your job. It's a part of who you are.
This is going to sound so simple, but like when it comes up in conversation, like it's so not something I lead with, so not something, but it's again, if I'm feeling shitty or like, oh, I had a really rough low night, like, okay, blah, 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 you know, like that kind of thing. Or like today at work, I was asking somebody, we're in open enrollment period. So, and I mean, I've said this so many times with our conversations, Justin, of like, don't get me started on insurance, but don't get me started on insurance right now. It's a stressful time. I need to pick my plan. So, but I was asking my coworker, I'm like, hey, what are you using? Blah, blah, blah. I know, I'm like, I'm at this one. I'm at this high pay, this so freaking expensive. I'm at this high plan because I have all the diabetes supplies, you know, that I got to pay for. So da-da-da-da. Like, for me, it just feels so integrated in my life that it doesn't ever feel like I'm like talking about diabetes. In fact, like sometimes when I have conversations like about diabetes, it feels, not like, I don't know, it still feels genuine, but it just doesn't, I don't know. It feels like I'm like putting a spotlight on something that I don't normally focus on all that much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then it was also like when I meet another diabetic out in the wild, I'm like, ooh, look at you, look at me. You know, it's like this fun moment. So I think sorry, very rambling answer, but like, I think it just depends on how close we are and if you are familiar with me being a diabetic, and I'll be, you know, much more open about it. But again, if it's like anecdotally relevant to what I'm talking about, like, of course, yeah, oh, I have diabetes, blah, blah, blah. But I am not one to walk into a big group of people and start just talking about it. That's just not my comfort level personally.
Yeah, and I wouldn't do that either. Like, I don't care that much about it. It usually just comes up in conversation. What about your technology? Do friends ask you about it? And do you kind of give them the whole spiel of like closed loop system?
No. If somebody asks me about it, I say, oh, it's my insulin pump. That's it. Oh, it's my insulin pump. Yeah, I have diabetes. That's it.
Oh my God, I'm such a tech.
People typically like stop at that, you know? And if I kept going, I think they would keep going, but I don't know. Again, it's just part of life. It's there. I'm so grateful to have this technology, but like, I don't know. I was just on vacation and I had this moment. I was in a bathing suit on a boat in the Mediterranean Sea. It was amazing. But everybody else on the boat, they're like, somehow my Omnipod became like a topic of conversation, and I was like, just throw me off the back. I'm done here. Like, it's just, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with it. But again, I'm like, I'm on the water, I'm in my bathing suit. Like, why am I talking about my autoimmune disease right now?
It's so funny you say that, because as much as I do like to talk about it and what I do, I more so like talking about what I do and how the technology works.
Yeah.
But I don't like when it becomes like, I don't know, whenever I'm like, sometimes when I'm looking at my phone, I'll have a friend say like, are your sugars okay? I'm like, oh, I don't need to be asked that. Like,
you're not my mom. Yeah.
I will let you, and I'll let you know. Like, usually they're friends that like I'm just good about letting people know if I'm having a moment.
Well, I was just gonna say, do you struggle with that? With the, I do. So this is fully me, projecting my experience onto you. But like, I sometimes get really irritated at like the nosy spectators with diabetes, and then I'm like, okay, they're just curious. They just want to learn more. They want to, but like, how do you feel about that when a friend of yours, is like kind of poking around in your business like that?
It's so interesting because like, I know they're not ill-intended at all. In fact, they're trying to be very supportive and curious. But like, I do get kind of annoyed when people ask me about my sugars, how they're doing, or say like, I've got some low snacks I always carry low snacks for you. Like, there's just something about it. I can't even explain. I don't know what it is, but there's this trigger in me that maybe it makes me feel less than. Right? I don't know why. It's hard for me to say what it is. I don't know if it's that.
No, that's a really interesting way to put it, though. It's like, why do you have to give me extra consideration, Although I'm such a food-motivated person. I'm a freaking dog over here. Like, you're like, oh, they carry snacks around. Yeah, sign me up. But no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And, like, sometimes but I'm like, you wouldn't ask, if you see somebody, like, take a puff of an inhaler, you're not going to be like, how are your lungs? Are you breathing okay? Like, you wouldn't ask that of somebody else. Like, why do you think it's okay to talk to me about this? I don't know. But again, people are just curious, and I am all for trying to educate, trying to put positivity about diabetes out there, because I think so many people that don't know somebody with type 1 have so many preconceived notions about it. So I really do try to be open, and here's what's going on. This is this, any other questions? But it is, I don't know. People are funny.
Yeah, I think for me, there's the difference of, hey, what is that? How does it work? Right? Like with the pump, like how do those devices work? And like, how are your numbers? One is more personal.
Yeah.
One's more about like, how are you taking care of yourself? Whereas the other one's like, what is the equipment you use? They're trying to learn more about like how it all works, rather than like, it's almost like, like charging me with something. They're like, what are you doing? Like, how are you okay? Oh, you put yourself in a low. Oh, you shouldn't have eaten that probably. Like, it's all kind of connected to like your habits. It makes it feel that way.
There's like a level of judgment involved in it somehow.
Yeah. And they definitely don't mean that, I'm sure. Right.
Not.
They just are trying to understand better. Now, another thing with friends, it's important for people to bring glucagon on trips, some form of it. Especially, I think it is, especially from stories that I've heard. I don't carry it with me everywhere, but like maybe I should have it on a hike. But like, have you ever gone on trips where you have it on you and like let people know what it is, where it is, and how to use it?
Yes, but I think, again, kind of similar to what I was saying about like when I'm at a party and I'm going to tell somebody how I'm doing, like I'm choosing that person wisely. Like, also, this is somebody who would notice if my behavior was off, or who would be conscientious of like, oh, Jenna hasn't like gotten out of bed yet or something, or, oh, like whatever it may be. So I think I've definitely said it. I think I've said it to you before, even pre your diagnosis, maybe. Or maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think so, because I also we didn't talk about diabetes like at all. I didn't even, and this was at a time when like no one was like, oh, CGMs, like there's TikTok now where people are seeing this all the time.
Well, and I feel
think
like
it really
so
is.
much
There's more exposure.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. There's so much more exposure, and also because more people are wearing CGMs, it's such a more visible, diabetes is so much more visible than it's ever been before, which I kind of love in some ways. It feels like for me, as someone who just grew up with it and just had this pump on the side of me, it was always kind of this like big surprise when someone would see it. And so I like that it's a little bit more visible in a way, but also less cumbersome, just, being something I wear on my arm. So I guess, I don't know, maybe I didn't. And admittedly, I most often now, if I'm traveling at this point in my life, it's with either family or with close friends like you, or with my boyfriend. And so I kind of have somebody to cover my bases. But honestly, I don't know. And this is, a stupid, late teens, early 20-something decision to make. But I don't really think I did that. I don't really think I told people, hey, this is how you use it. This is what we do. And I will also say, too, in my defense, that glucagon has come leaps and bounds in the past few years, whereas I'm so much more confident now, like handing somebody my, what's it called? The basilisk or whatever? The nasal spray.
That's from Harry Potter.
I was just going to say, no, mine begins with a B. My prescription begins with a B, I swear to God. Not basilisk. Yeah, that is Baqsimi. Like the parcel tongue thing. Baqsimi? Yeah. All right, well, Baqsimi. I hand somebody, I'm like, oh, see this thing? Just follow the instructions on here. We're good to go. You just put it up my nose, poof, we're good. Yeah. Like, that's so much easier than, like, you have to draw out this powder into the injection and stab me and da-da-da. Like, that is... I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's intense. And I mean, I came into this with just put this up my nose and press down, or even the Gvoke HypoPen, which is like an EpiPen. Just put it into my leg, and
but
and there you go.
Preloaded, the whole thing, like,
and I can also, I also understand, like, I didn't grow up with this, but like as an 18-year-old, do I want to be talking to my friend? Like, I wouldn't have had that confidence and courage to talk about it. Whereas now I do. And it depends on the trip. If I know I'm going to be drinking a lot, or if I know I'm going to like be running around a lot, I'll find that one person, or maybe even a couple people, to be like, hey, there's this yellow thing in my bag. Just go grab it. It's in my toiletry bag if anything were to happen. That's all I really need to say. I don't even have to really show it to them. It's pretty obvious. It's in my toiletry bag and it's yellow.
And again, the instructions are so easy. I actually my boyfriend had to administer that. It was like a little less than a year ago at this point, but it was, he always had a big hang up about, doing the glucagon injection, and, we've been together for a while now, but he was always very nervous about it. And he talked about it. He's like, it's 4 a.m. I just turned the light on, read the instructions, and poof, you're good to go. So it worked out perfectly.
What was that like?
Oh, scary, of course. It's weird because like he tells the story and he's so frantic and so afraid, and he woke up in the middle. I fell asleep on my phone, so all of my sensor alarm. This is before I had the Omnipod 2, which alarms when you get low, when you drop below 55. So I just had my Dexcom and I fell asleep on my phone, so all of my alarms were like very muffled, and neither one of us heard it. So he woke up and I was like drenched, literally had just, sweat through my clothes, it was really bad, and he literally was trying to pour orange juice down my face, like down my throat. I woke up just like covered in juice, like had all the stuff, like it was crazy. And so then he administered the nasal spray, and I remember like waking up, like having this weird moment and still feeling incredibly disoriented and low, but at least you're conscious. At least he's like, Jenna, drink this now. Like you can start, actually, you're not unconscious anymore. You can play a part in bringing your blood sugar back up. So, I mean, it was really scary. And even after all of these years with him, I still get this immense feeling of embarrassment and shame, which is amplified when you're low, of course. But I still feel this like, I'm so sorry you have to deal with this. I'm so sorry. Which is, it, again, just comes with the territory. This is just part of life. But yeah, it was really scary. And we talk about it and definitely, you always try to figure out what did I do wrong or what happened or how did this go wrong? And it can be something so small sometimes, but all is good and grateful to have the technology I have and very grateful to have, to have had the help that night because I needed it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really scary story to listen to, especially as someone who has type 1. And there's so many people listening probably, and definitely people that follow me that have been through something similar, and they're traumatized by it. I mean, I had a moment when I was traumatized by my own experience that wasn't even close to that. It, maybe it was a little off from needing to use glucagon. I mean, how did you feel? Like, I mean, even what you're saying about the, like, I feel so bad, I'm sorry you have to go through this to your partner, like, which is not like, I understand why you were saying that and feeling that, but your partner's there because they care about you and they care about every part of you, and it's so important to, be with someone who is like that. But I understand that. How did you feel after that? Like, was there a form of PTSD from that for some period of time of being afraid that will happen? Were you afraid to give yourself as much insulin?
My cat's joining us.
Were you afraid to give yourself, like, I got PTSD of like giving myself, like, I got worried about giving myself too much insulin. So I started giving myself less insulin, which wasn't good. I grew out of it. But like, did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, I'm apprehensive to say PTSD for me just because, again, I just don't know any different. Like, I don't mean to sound like overly simple here, but I just don't. I'm scared of something happening, but I don't know an alternative too. Like, I think of it as just like the ebbs and flow of life at this point. So, I mean, the next day after, like, I was exhausted. I felt kind of sick still. Whenever I get really low, I get a really bad headache afterwards. So I had that. So they're like physical symptoms. And then of course the emotional side of it too, of like, in the moment, as we were saying, like, I felt embarrassment and, I felt bad that this happened, but then it turns from like feeling bad for someone else and then kind of turns inward and you start to think, like you were saying, you're bolusing differently. You're maybe you're not going to be eating certain foods. You're not going to be drinking certain things. So, I mean, I do think for a day or two after, you're still kind of caught up in like the moment of all of it. But again, something that, some people are like, oh, I can't believe you've had diabetes for forever. I'm like, I'm a lucky one. I really feel that way. So and I mean, I hear stories like yours of just, and how could you not feel this crazy, traumatic sense of like, I did this, I need to correct this, I can't put myself in this situation again. How could you not have that reaction to a scary, traumatic event like that? So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just wild. But like I said, it's just moving through it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, for the record, also, I don't want to be diminishing like what PTSD is. It's a very serious thing. No. I'm just letting everyone know that's listening because I've had comments before. Like, it's the easiest way for me to kind of just like say that about what I experienced. That's why I say a very small form of PTSD because it is a traumatic moment. Yeah. But I just want to say, like, for everyone listening who's kind of gone through a similar moment as Jenna with that like inward moment, that this is a disease that's not easy. And even no matter how good you are at handling it, there are moments that are out of our control. Totally. And we do the best we can. And I mean, I've had those moments too where I have that, and this is kind of what I was talking about just earlier in the episode with like highs and lows, and is like when I have a low that's bad, it's just a side effect of it that I get really down on myself. Like I remember this one moment, I was in a car, I was with friends and we decided to split into different cars, and I wound up just being in a car with a person I met like 2 hours before. Really nice guy, but I didn't know this person. And I started having like a low, and I didn't have low snacks. Look at me, not having low snacks again. No, you know what? I had one low snack. So I ate it, but he was trying to talk to me and like get to know me as we're driving to his place. And I had to explain this whole thing of like, I have diabetes, and I was getting so down on myself. It's weird because I don't hate having diabetes at all, but in that moment, I was so upset and angry that I had diabetes, and being like, this is something, it's like
others you in a unique kind of way, because it's, I mean, realistically speaking, you don't have to, you could walk through life and no one knows that anything is going on with you unless you are in that moment. And in that moment, you are vulnerable. You are with someone you don't know. And I literally need your help right now. Like, I need you to know what's going on. I need your help because I am in trouble. Like, that is such a scary feeling. And I think it's, but again, kudos to you, Justin, for being able to be open about that and open with your feelings and open about just like, this is what's going on. Here we are. Here are the facts. Like, I need you to just be, on my side, on my wavelength with this right now.
A quick word from today's sponsor, Omnipod. When I was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, one of my biggest fears was wearing an insulin pump and what that would look like. My fears were totally diminished once I started wearing Omnipod. Omnipod is a tubeless insulin pump that could be worn almost anywhere you'd give yourself an injection. What I love most is that I forget I'm wearing it. I never have to worry about disconnecting it for showers or swimming, and when I play kickball or go running, it's super secure. Even better, with Omnipod 5, you get automated insulin delivery by connecting it to a CGM. Omnipod 5 uses CGM trend and value to predict your glucose 60 minutes into the future and makes adjustments to your insulin delivery. If you want to try out Omnipod 5 yourself, you may be eligible for a trial. To check your eligibility and for full safety information and instructions for use, visit omnipod.com/diabetech or click the link in today's show notes. All right, back to the show. Yeah, you said it right. It's that vulnerability. You're automatically in this state, and you may not be ready to be vulnerable with this person. You don't have to be vulnerable with this person. You just met them. But that's where you are. And again, for people listening, do yourself a favor and let that person know what's going on, because then you'll feel less alone. Mm-hmm. It's not worth living that really bad low and trying to feel better and trying to listen to them in this specific type of situation. Like, it really isn't. And it did help when I told him, because he was like, oh, in my house, I actually have a bowl of M&Ms, so we can have some of those when we get there. And like, just hearing that, or he was like, do you want me to stop at 7-Eleven? Like, it just like, it was, he handled it very well. And it made me feel a little bit better, even though I was still pretty upset. But I'm glad I did say something.
I totally agree with you, because I think as soon as you let someone know what's going on, they really want to help. Like, I was at my friend's house. We were watching The Bachelor, and this was on my old pump, my Medtronic pump, and I'd forgotten to change. I got a low battery alert earlier in the day, and I forgot to change it because I would let that go way too long. But I literally was like, I'm like at her house. I'm like, hey, do you have a AA battery? If not, I need to leave for like 10 minutes and I'll be right back. This girl tore her whole apartment apart looking for it. She's like, I'm like, I'll come back. I promise. I'll be right back. Just pause the show. I'll be right back. She's like, I have it. I know I have it somewhere. It's almost like when you are vulnerable with someone like that, vulnerability begets intimacy. It makes you feel closer to somebody. And so people are going to lean into that situation that much more, which also, gives me faith in greater humanity of like, if and when, I know this has happened to me before, but like, God forbid you are alone in the middle of, New York City or something, you're walking on a street or you're driving somewhere and you're like, oh my God, I need low stuff right now. Like if you are in a pinch, someone is going to help you. Someone will step in. I truly have all the confidence that someone would.
Yeah. A bit of a change in direction is relationships, specifically like romantic ones. You've been dating your partner for a while.
Yeah.
But if you can remember a time when you were dating lots of people, how did you navigate dating? Especially when it comes to like after a few dates when there may be some more intimacy involved. Like, what was that like for you? Especially also you were on a tubed pump, so I'm very curious about that too.
I think like with a lot of my late teens, early 20s, I just did a lot to, I don't know, I was not as open as I am now. And I'm not going to say I regret that, but I'm grateful to be as open and candid and calm and, willing to communicate with people more about my diabetes now. Because there was definitely a point in time where I was very, I'm not going to say closed off, but I was very into like, all right, let's just keep going with the flow. Let's keep moving. Let's keep going. Like it doesn't have to derail your life in any kind of way. So admittedly, in those situations, it was real just like, I don't know. All right, here you see it. Here we go. It wasn't ever like a big like, unless they're like seeing me, like if we're having like dinner or drinks or something and I'm giving myself insulin, then I'll just like offhandedly mention it. But like, it was never something I brought up to be like, I'm a diabetic, It just wasn't. I kind of wait for the situation to emerge before addressing it, which I don't know if that was the right or wrong way to handle it. I mean, my current partner, he tells me, he still makes fun of me for this. He's like, I found out you were a diabetic when you got really low on our first hike together. He's like, you had low stuff, but I didn't know you were a diabetic before that. So,
wow.
It's, that was my style. It wasn't kind of my style. That was my style, which I don't think is right. But I also, at that time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed an explanation or like this, I don't know, I just didn't need these people knowing all this about me. But then again, as I said, when you're vulnerable with people, it makes you feel closer. So maybe that would have worked out differently for me. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, is there something, if you could go back and like tell your old self at that time anything about what you've learned today, like, is there something that you would tell them?
Honestly, nothing that no one else told me straight up. Of, no one cares, it's all good, just be open with it, just whatever. And like, that truly, that's like what I would say to any, self-conscious 20-year-old right now. Like, it's all good, who cares? And I do feel like being a little bit more visible with diabetes helps with that. Also, like, I will never forget this beautiful line. My old roommate said this to me one time where he was like, Jenna, you're not special. Everyone knows a diabetic. Good God. Like, so
I think I know who that is.
Yes. Very fitting.
But that is actually such a good, such good advice, because I even say that, like, if I go through a heartbreak or a difficult day at work, whatever, I'm like, Justin, you are not unique in any way in that, like, in this, like, this has happened to so many people, and you know what? They got through it, and so will you.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, some tough love, but definitely works. So yeah, I mean, again, if I were with somebody and just doing it, I maybe put him through the ringer a little bit. Here you go, surprise. Yeah. But I don't know, never really interfered all that much, honestly. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, dating's been a bit different for a few reasons. First of all, like, there's Instagram, and oftentimes people will find that, or, everyone's like, do you have an Instagram? I'm like, what about like phone numbers? Remember those? Although this is a phone number with pictures.
You're so old fashioned.
Yeah. But if I really like you, I'll ask for your phone number, not your Instagram. So anyone listening,
hot take.
You now know. But like, you look at my Instagram, you've got pictures with my Omnipod. And I also feel like Omnipod is a little bit more of like an accessory than a tube pump. At least to me, it seems that way. Like I like to show it off. So it's a little different for everyone. But also you've got like, promoting diabetes awareness and pride, like right in my bio with like,
my
with
cat's butt is in this whole video. I'm so sorry to be distracting.
No, you're fine. And then you've got obviously my social handle for Diabetech in that bio as well. So
right.
It's pretty quick that people will know what I do. If you haven't seen my Instagram yet, you'll know as soon as we talk about work. So, people know pretty quickly. And I think what I like about not necessarily my approach, but the fact that it's out there is that like, I don't feel uncomfortable about it anyway. And I also say that I think having been diagnosed later in age, around at 30 years old, like I already built the confidence that I needed to not care what people think. Not that, and I've never really come into contact with anyone, at least to my face, that said like, oh, I don't want to like date you. You're wearing a pump, whatever. I don't even think there's that many people, but that also like people are attracted to people who love themselves. Right. So like the fact that I love that part about me, I'll be able to attract people who love that about me, right? So I think it's so important to be confident in that and love yourself for that and see the special parts of it, like the fact that you're so strong. And
I love you that you are so open about it, and you have helped me be that much more open about it. But I mean, I guess just for, listeners' sake, you and I are opposite ends of the spectrum with this in terms of dating. What do we think would be a good middle ground, maybe? Like for somebody who doesn't have, it's not part of their professional identity like it is with you. It's not, just out there for everyone to see, which in a way I'm kind of envious of, because it's never like you have to like, you're never presenting yourself as a diabetic. You just, it's there and for, people to just see and learn about. But I'm curious, like what do you think would be a good middle ground for somebody who is just dating, who doesn't have the Instagram presence you do with diabetes? How would you handle it?
That's a good question.
I know, I don't even have an answer for it.
It's hard, right? It's hard because like I really have had that like that easy way of it's just like it's what I do. I think that you shouldn't hide your devices. Don't be afraid to put it on your arm because you're about to wear a tank top and you don't want people to see it, right? Yeah. Like wear your devices with pride, decorate them like with acrylic jewels. I put acrylic jewels on my Omnipod when I, have a cool outfit on and I'm going to like a certain event. Don't be afraid to, talk about it. I know we talked about how like you didn't really do that back then. There's so much exposure now that it's not a surprise to a lot of people.
No, it isn't.
And it's not something to hide. And it's not something to hide until you take your shirt off or go on that first hike. In fact, I wouldn't hide it when you go on a hike, especially because like that can cause you to go low, like I don't, there's nothing to be afraid of, because if someone is weirded out by it, then you should be weirded out by that. So
100%, right? 100%. Oh my God. Anybody who is worth your time is going to care for you. Again, when you were in that vulnerable state, like if anybody has any issues with it, like bye, not worth this whatsoever. Jesus, you clearly need to do some more research for yourself. That person, not you, but
exactly. So the best thing you can do is just be okay with showing it off. You don't have to be like obvious about it, but wear things wherever you want. Feel free to bring it up in conversation. If you have a low, be like, oh, I'm having a little low blood sugar. I have type 1 and I'm just gonna have a little snack. Like you throw it super casually. I do it super casually too. Like I'm not like, hey, I'm a content creator. Like if I'm like at like whatever and I'm eating a snack, someone's like, oh, why are you eating that? I'm like, oh, I have a little low blood sugar. They get the point.
There you go. I agree with you. I think I think if I were to go on a first date tomorrow, I would, I think I would make mention of it, like with this Omnipod I have now. So it's a little different where like I have this device that looks like a phone that I'm, bolusing on and stuff. And I think I would, I'm just going to give myself some insulin real quick, like that kind of thing. And then, like you said, I'm real low. We're just going to move on now, though. So you're pointing it out, you're addressing it, but it's not like becoming a big topic of conversation.
I think with all of the technology that we have today, it's made life a lot easier for people with diabetes.
Yeah.
But I think it's also maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, put it in our face a little bit more, being almost more hyper aware of it. And I say this as there's two screens behind me that have my blood sugar levels. How am I doing? So Jenna, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on having your CGM levels on your phone? Do you love it? Or do you feel like you're checking it a lot? Not like a normal amount? And then kind of, can you relate that back to like when you didn't have that?
Yeah, I was really, really resistant to, I've been resistant to technology. If you've listened to any of my other chats with Justin, you understand this. I don't know, I guess just human nature, resistant to change. But I was really, really resistant to get on Dexcoms again, because I had tried Dexcom briefly in, I forget, it was like 2016 or 2017, and I was on it for like a year, went off of it, and then got back on the Medtronic sensor, didn't have a great experience with that, and then in 2020 fully committed, have been on a CGM every single day ever since. And I was really nervous about it, because I'm like, I'm not a big phone person, like I'm not a huge texter, I'm not a huge and I was just like, I just don't want to have to carry this around with me always. Like, this is so annoying. And then multiply that, when I moved to Omnipod, that was a big pain point for me of like, oh my God, it's just always on me now. And admittedly, now that I've settled in, I really do. I love just how accessible it all is. I think that's my big thing. And that's the big difference, I would say, between the before times and now, is that it's all just there. It's, it's way easier to pull out my Omnipod, when I'm at a party or a concert and there's a ton of people around me, and just check check what my blood sugar is, give myself a little insulin. Then before, all right, my partner would do this thing always where we were out somewhere and he would see me taking my BG kit out and he would hold his hands like this, which was very sweet. He'd hold his hands like this. So I had a place to put my meter, and he would hold the things for me while I'm doing my business, So it was incredibly sweet, but it's, it just takes up more space. It takes up more time. So I'm really grateful to have this technology, but I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I spent 20 plus years just living and thinking very differently about diabetes than I do currently. Diabetes was much easier to kind of put on the back burner and not think about, not talk about. As Justin was saying, I've known Justin for over 10 years at this point, and it just was not at the forefront of my life. And now I find it very difficult to not have it at the forefront of my life. It's just there always, and it's always accessible, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I love having the number accessible and can't imagine not having that. But one thing I've done, and it's now been possibly 6-8 weeks, I have not worn my Apple Watch at all.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
I don't miss it. Yeah, and I don't miss it. And it's a great tool, and I love that people use it. It's great to get those alerts. But yeah, I have not worn it at all. Maybe if I may have gone to one Broadway show and I was like, you know what? Let me tell you, in a Broadway show and a movie, yeah. So great, so perfect, especially since I'm on DIY Loop and I can bolus from it. But besides those 2 hours at the show or whatever, have not had it on, and not having access to my numbers on my watch has been a game changer because I don't look at my number unless I get an alert. It's crazy. Yeah. It's huge. And I also see my number when like I go to bolus too, right? But like and I also have them on screens in my.
I mean, but like it's still accessible. You just don't need the extra thing. Can I ask?
It's different.
What prompted you to take the Apple Watch off? Why?
Because I realized that diabetes was taking up too much time in my brain and taking me out of the moment specifically. I was like, diabetes is already my job. And it's already a second job, but I think there's a way I can remove a large percentage of the amount that it impedes on my life, specifically special moments with people and special moments, or events or experiences that I would get taken out of having that there. Thinking ahead, right? Thinking of the future. Anxiety is being worried about the future, right? So if you always have access to your numbers and the arrow, you may get anxious because you're worrying about where it's going. Mm-hmm. And usually, like more often than not, there's nothing to worry about because if you're on an automated system, it's gonna catch you. So
no, I feel that so hard though. Like I was saying, I just got back from this wonderful trip, but this is my first time on an automated system and having the dual screens, in front of me on this trip. And I found myself being so, again, I just feel like such a hypocrite because I'm so like, it's the ebbs and flow of life. You just have to go through it. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, what are you talking about? My percent in range has gone down. Like, so annoyed.
That's another aspect of it. Having that, like, all of that detailed data in your hands, not your doctor's hands, right?
Right.
Like, you can, like, be a data scientist and be hard on yourself. And it's so important to not be hard on yourself.
It's hard to not be hard on yourself, though, with all of this data.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have to, at least this is my experience, I had to consciously be like, don't look at it right now. Or consciously like, oh, you're going up. That's okay. We're okay. We're going to catch it. You gave yourself insulin. You're going to see yourself climb, and then you're going to come back down. And that specifically is something that, I mean, and there's no way to change it. I would take the technology and the visibility any day over the, the kind of bolusing in the dark that I did for 20 plus years. But see, it specifically when your blood sugar is climbing, like that kills me, where you're just watching it go, 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 go. And I'm like, I've already given insulin and I don't want to double bolus because then I'm going to get low. But maybe it wasn't aggressive enough. Maybe my automated, maybe my algorithm's going to be a little off for this one because all of these things are now running through my head and it's really hard to disengage.
Yeah. I know you've said in the past that you're not as you don't keep up as much on like diabetes technology and where it's going. I'm sure I've changed that a bit.
You have. Yeah.
Do you get excited when you see my videos about things that are coming? Or, yeah. And be honest, I'm not going to take this personal at all.
I get excited when I see your videos about you promoting something cool. I think because I just made a big jump, I'm a little like, okay, I mean, I've been on Omnipod since July now, so it's been it's been several months, but again, just there are still so many new and first experiences I have to have with this new device. I'm having a hard time, getting excited or looking forward to other things. I mean, I do get excited, of course, when I'm like, oh, it's going to be smaller. Or when is my freaking app coming on my iPhone? I'm waiting for that, baby. I am excited for that. But I guess in terms of devices, I'm happy where I am right now and I'm still just getting acclimated. But so I don't know, that was kind of a yes and no answer.
Yeah. Well, for everyone who doesn't know, Jenna's talking about the Omnipod 5 app that was announced that it was with the FDA in May.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's imminent. It's got to be coming end of year, early next year. I mean, come on.
I'm ready.
The reason I asked you if you're excited about technology is because a few episodes after this, or maybe even one episode after this, I'm having people on the show who are going to be talking about a system called iAPS. And this system, so I'm talking to two people who are involved. One of them, she's on Ozempic. She doesn't bolus ever and eats whatever she wants on this system, including a Cinnabon with all the cream on it. And she is, get ready for it, over 85% in range always.
What?
Never boluses.
Does it, and so
And
it just
then-
does it for you?
It has a more aggressive algorithm, more aggressive and more and stronger than anyone on the market. This is like the new DIY loop.
I have a lot of questions about this, which means I just need to tune into the video. But I'm like,
Tune in, everyone.
How does it work?
I just wanted to kind of excite you a bit and give everyone a little bit of a tease.
No, I am excited. I'm anxious to hear from these people. And again, I'm just like, how? Why? How? So
Yeah.
that'll be cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Now, I wanted to go a little bit back to the traveling because I know you wanted to talk about that. What do you think? How do you think diabetes has kind of like made your life, I guess, a little more difficult with traveling? And has there ever been a moment, I guess, where like a scary moment, I guess, where you're like, oh my God, I'm not prepared for this?
I'm not prepared for this because, again, growing up in the I'm stealing my word from a minute ago, the dark bolusing, the dark ages of diabetes, I pack like for the apocalypse whenever I'm going on like even a weekend trip. I'm like, all right, we have shots, we have injections, we have 10 different site changes, we have our glucagon, we have that. Like, I'm a nut. So it's never I'm unprepared. But again, I think this time around after this trip, like, there is just a heightened awareness because of how accessible all of this data is. Like, and also in the same breath, so I was traveling with my mom, and I think because she sees me looking at it, so she is now asking more questions about it too, which is
wow.
That's
It's kind of back to that thing we were saying.
Mm-hmm, exactly, of like the people like, and it's, it's my mom, so it's different, but also in the same breath, it's like, I've been doing this solo for a while, and I don't know, parents, I think, Justin, you should do an episode with some parents at some point, just because it's such a different perspective to have, and I can't even begin to understand the amount of worry, concern, anxiety that happens, not only when you have a kid with diabetes, but then when that kid is like, I'm going on my own, I need to just take care of myself. So, and I think that's something like still to this day, I give both of my parents want to know what my blood sugars are. They want to know what my A1C is. They want to know what's going on. And I'm like, you live 1,000 miles away from me. But it's one of those things like, okay, mom and dad, I'll indulge. I'll tell you, So yeah, sorry, back to my, heightened awareness of diabetes while traveling. It's just, it's a double-edged sword, you are able to see where you are and to be able to anticipate where you're going so much more easily. But in the same breath, it's like you said, sometimes it just takes you out of the moment a little bit because you're just staring at your screen, which I hate. So, but I will, I was camping one weekend this summer and we literally were like celebrating. I was, okay, guys, not humble brag here, not even humble brag, full brag, but I was 95% for the whole weekend during a weekend camping trip. So we're hiking, we're eating weird food, we're doing whatever. And we were literally like, what? Like cheering. It was amazing. So, and I'm not that in range when I'm not camping. So it was just wild. It was really cool. So, I mean, that was obviously a great moment of it, but like, again, maybe we should have been looking at the beautiful woods around us instead of looking at my Omnipod device.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to celebrate those wins, even though you have no idea how the heck it happened.
Dude, seriously? No, no, you know what happened? I didn't stop eating. I was like, I'm not even hungry, but like we just hiked. I need to eat more fruit. Which is also another weird part about diabetes too, is like I don't know, I was talking to my mom a little bit about this. Sorry, this is a serious side tangent, but like just how it's hard to not have a weird relationship with food as a diabetic. Because you have to eat at times when you're not hungry. You can't eat certain foods, or certain foods are going to make your blood sugars in your body do crazy things. It's just really challenging, you know? Like there was one night when we were on our trip and I got pretty low, and I'm literally like, I'm so full from dinner. I just like can't I don't want to eat anymore, but like, ugh, you know, like, and obviously there's juices and glucose tabs and the whole thing, but like I don't know, you don't want to eat anything. It's just weird. So anyway, again, sidebar,
well, that was actually that tangent led me to where we're going anyway.
Oh, perfect.
Which is how we interact with food. And I think one of the most stressful experiences nowadays for me that never was, it used to be one of the most enjoyable experiences, and it still is, but it's harder now, is group dinners, specifically at like family style. And then also you have this one person who's like, oh, we're going to order this. We're going to get that. We're going to get that. We're going to get that.
Me.
And like sometimes the menu's not even in English and they know everything. And they're saying insalata de babada, you know, like whatever. And I'm over in the corner. I'm a little like, I have no idea what's coming. I don't want to have a high blood sugar. Like, I don't, right? Like, I want to enjoy this night. Like, I don't want to go in the 300s. Mm-hmm. So I need to know what food we're getting because I don't want to go high. Yeah. So then I have to go ask that person. And usually I'm fine with it. But, like, be like, hey, what are we getting? Like, tell me the carbs we're getting. Like, what, you know, pastas, breads. Like, people don't even know, like, what everything with carbs are. Like when you say it, it's like, well, you know, I'm like, and potatoes, like anything with carbs.
Exactly.
And then, you know, so, and then like the sauces are even important, right? Like some sauces are going to have like a ton of sugar. So anyway, like I get a little anxious when I go somewhere and people are like, oh, let's just share a bunch of things. I like so much more prefer having my own plate, knowing what I'm going to eat. Whereas like when you're sharing plates, you also don't know like how much you're going to get, you know? And I do like to pre-bolus, and I do like to, I don't know. I guess I am an anxious person. So like I do get anxious just over the unknown of what food we're going to get. And like, how crazy is that for people?
Oh, sorry.
Right. Yeah. Well, how crazy is it? This conversation, like this, what I'm saying right now, like most of the world has no idea people with type 1 are going through this in whatever way they are, right? Like I'm sure you go through it maybe a little less intense, maybe as me, maybe not. But like this is a thing for me. And so you're so right. Like, and this is another aspect of that like relationship with food. Even what you said, that's totally a part of it too. But like, I don't know, do you feel this way, or is it like, you know, your whole life you've been sharing things, so it's whatever?
I don't feel anxious about sharing things. I feel anxious because I also I pre-bolus for just about everything I eat. And I guess not all the time, because most often I'm kind of in my routine and I know what's happening. But like when you're out of that, like when I was traveling and I'm pre-bolusing for pastas and stuff, I kept getting low. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? You know, like, I mean, it's just different ingredients than you would normally eat. It's going to have a different, you know, it's going to interact with your body differently. So I wouldn't say I get nervous about it. The thing I get nervous about, and here's a real disconnect between our two brains, is when I walk into, my girlfriend's having a dinner party, and I'm there, I'm walking in, I'm schmoozing with everybody, I'm going to have a little snack here, I'm going to have a little thing here, I'm going to have a little thing here. And I forgot to bolus now. And now I've skyrocketed. And now I've ruined my dinner even before I got to eat it. And I don't feel well. And I just like messed up my night. Like that's a very real thing for me. And I think something that, you know, I really struggled with as like a teenager too, was remembering to bolus. It doesn't happen all that often anymore, but sometimes you just get caught up in the moment, you know? So I get, I try to be mindful about that. I wouldn't say that my reaction is anxiety. I would say mine is like, I'm really trying to remember. I'm really trying to be mindful. I'm really trying to like allocate carbs correctly. I'm doing a lot of quick math, but then sometimes I second guess myself and I'm looking at things on my phone and, that kind of thing. So a little different. And I mean, that also may at some point evolve for you too, Justin, just as you are living with this longer. And I'm not saying my way is better or your way is, better, worse, whatever. It just is, I hope that just like some of the nervousness around diabetes can settle, I guess.
I think it will. And I think it already has. Like, I'm so much further than I once was. And also with where technology is going and with what I said earlier about a system where you don't even have to bolus, like that is our future. Insulin innovation is our future. Like, these are things that will happen before a cure if we get one.
Yeah.
And a couple things, what you said, like I have heard often that like younger people, like kids and teenagers, and they often forget to bolus or they don't pre-bolus, right?
I didn't pre-bolus until like 5 years ago. I didn't even like know that was a thing.
That's also a newer, it's a newer thing.
Yeah.
I've heard. Like like people pre-bolusing wasn't always a thing, which is like news to me. And what you said about like messing up your dinner, I totally get that. Like, I remember there's been moments, but specifically I remember we were going to dim sum. Is that where like they bring things on the cart?
Yes, I love it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this was the first time I was getting dim sum ever since I was diagnosed. So like I was a little nervous because everything's like rice cakes and like rice balls or like mochi or whatever those, Play-Doh rice things are. Like, I don't know the carb count for any of this. And I arrived and I was at 240 and I didn't even realize, like, I have no idea like where my brain was. I had no idea I was high. So I got like a Thai iced tea. I was afraid to drink it. I couldn't. I was afraid to. Yeah, Thai iced teas. They're amazing.
I just gave a verbal reaction to that because there are few things in this world that make my blood sugar spike more than Thai iced tea and white rice.
Literally. Well, those get absorbed way faster, and luckily on my app I can actually put that, which is helpful. The absorption time's 30 minutes on here, which is nice. But like I was messed up mentally and also like actually physically. Like, I was not feeling well. I was with all these new people. I didn't know anyone really except for the person I was there with. And then we went and saw a movie and I wasn't going to eat popcorn. I was uncomfortable sitting in the movie the whole time. Like, I'm afraid to sometimes eat food. It's just, that's the fact, right? So we do have a very weird relationship with food, and food's one of my favorite things, right?
I know,
For me,
it's the best.
It really makes me happy. And I think some of that happiness has definitely gone away, but I'm never going to let it, really go away. But
I think for me, it's about just trying to recognize, like, it's just trying to make the right choice in the moment, So if my blood sugar if I have forgotten to bolus and I'm, was too wrapped up in conversation and I just, didn't even think to do it. And now it's dinner time. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to have any carbs, or I'm going to have very low carb dinner and I'm going to aggressively bolus and I'm going to be, checking my numbers from this point. But like, I don't know. I really try to frame it as like, this isn't the last dim sum I'm ever going to be able to eat. If I can't really enjoy this right now in this moment, I can come back tomorrow. Because you know what? I'm a full-grown adult and I can do that with my life. So for me, it's a small consolation, not constellation, small consolation, but it helps me not grieve the loss of that special moment quite as hard. Again, I don't know. I feel like in a weird way, I've thematically made this whole episode for me about just like moving through it. So here we are yet again, just trying to get through the high blood sugar and get back into normalcy when I can have a little bit more choice with what I want to be eating and what I want to be doing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great perspective, right? Like, we have these obstacles and these moments that may be hard at the moment, but ultimately we get through them. We get through them pretty quickly, usually. Like it may be like an hour or two, or 10 minutes. But tomorrow's another day, and it's not worth beating yourself up over it, because you can eat pizza another day and have, I don't know, and get it down. I mean, there's no way to be perfect at any of this. So there's no reason to be mad at yourself. But I also understand. Yeah.
Do you feel like you internalize diabetes? Like, do you feel like you have a hard time not taking it personally when your numbers aren't doing what you want them to?
I'm hard on myself, for sure. No, there's definitely moments, and it's the moments, and it's like, I'm here telling everyone to not feel alone, talk to your friends. But I get it, and I'm not perfect either, and I don't do that always. And there's sometimes I'm in the room with a group of friends and my sugar's stuck high, and I'm so upset at myself, and I'm so upset at, like, I don't know why it won't go down. Is it a pump failure? Is it the food? Is it, like, what is it, right? Like, do I need to, like, and then, like, there's just this list of questions you're going through, and do I have to go home to put on a new pump? Like, I don't know. It can be taxing. So yeah, and I can be hard on myself about, like, what my numbers are looking at. But this is usually highs. I don't get mad at myself for going low. No, I don't think so. Like, but I get mad at being high and high for too long, and frustrated. I think frustration is the best way to put it. That's why I took off my Apple Watch. Definitely part of that.
My endocrinologist when I was little fed me this, there are no bad numbers. There's no such thing as a bad number. And I was like, bullshit. Yes, there is. Like, I know I said this recently to my current endocrinologist and was just as vehemently upset as I was a moment ago. And he framed it really well, where he was like, one day out of the course of your life, or a handful of days where you have these erratic blood sugars, like, it's not going to make that big of a difference. It's the trends. It's consistently where you are. That's what's going to determine your long-term health. So, but that's really hard to remember in the moment. It's really hard.
We just have to give ourselves a little bit of grace. And I think I get better and better with that the longer I have this disease. So it's a journey, I think.
Of course.
And you grow more and more over time with it. Speaking of all this food, I'm hungry. It's time for dinner.
Yes.
This was fantastic. It was really great to hear your experience with a lot of these things. And honestly, like, I feel less alone just from hearing what you're saying, because a lot of what you said, I also, like, experience for sure. And it's not often you hear other people talk about those inner struggles you have.
I totally agree. And I think it's really important to talk about it, because I think it's pretty universal. And I also think with the vast majority of, I don't know, I feel like we hear opposite. Again, we're all just aiming for balance. That's the key in life to everything, in my opinion, is just balance. So it's, we hear of these horror stories of these long-term effects, but then also it's impossible to expect perfection constantly. So it's just trying to navigate our way through it. And I'm so grateful for you and for this community that you have created, and for everybody who is listening and participating in the conversation. It's just, yeah, like you said, makes you feel less alone.
Yeah. Well, Jenna, thank you so much. I'm going to go eat, and I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon.
I'll see you in Portland. Well, I'll talk to you before then. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to hear those episodes with Jenna that she came on for, she came on to talk about her transition from Medtronic to Omnipod 5 And she also came on to talk to me about our visit to Omnipod headquarters in Massachusetts. That was a lot of fun. I've also got a video showing off a ton of footage and commentary on that visit. That's on YouTube. Before we close up the episode, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for listening to my podcast, watching my videos, commenting on all of my posts with inspiring comments and helpful comments to other viewers and followers. It means so much to me, but also it means so much to the community that we're building. I love seeing all of these conversations going on my videos and my social media posts. I don't have enough time to comment on everything as much as I want to because I'm too busy putting out content. Otherwise, there would be no content. So thank you so much for all you do. I am playing around with the idea of doing a live Q&A once a month. That way, if I didn't answer your comments, you can come in and ask your questions live. Then I can take that and I can post it up on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, you can give me a comment. And if you're listening, feel free to DM me on social media. All right, I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.